Introduction: Behind the Mask, Uncovering the Illusion of Ego. Have you ever felt like you're wearing a mask every day? A mask that you've created yourself, one that hides your true face from the world around you. You think this mask will help you fit in, gain approval, or keep you safe. But strangely enough, the more you wear it, the more you begin to feel distant from who you really are. Imagine that mask. At first, you might not even notice it, but over time, it becomes a part of you. It sticks to your face, hiding your real emotions, your true desires, and even the fears you've never dared to face. The ego that defines you at this moment isn't really you. It's the image that mask creates, the version of you that you think the world wants to see. But what if you tried taking that mask off? Picture the relief, like stepping out of the shadows into the light, seeing who you really are without the need to live up to any external expectations. No need to wear a perfect facade, no need to chase after approval. You would just be your true self, simple, raw, and free. In this video, I'll walk you through how to remove that ego mask, how to let go of the need to define yourself by external validation, and how this simple act can lead you to a life of true inner peace. The feeling of freedom and relief when you stop hiding behind the mask is what I want to show you. Stay with me for the next few minutes, and let's explore together how you can let go of your ego and discover that you were never meant to hide who you really are. Because when you do, you'll realize you've always been enough just as you are. Number 1, understanding the ego. The ego is not a tangible enemy. It's more like a lens through which we interpret the world. It colors our perception, often leading us to over-identify with external labels, such as success, status, or roles we play in society. This attachment to the ego is like being a fisherman clinging to the net, mistaking the catch for the ocean itself. When we define ourselves by the roles we occupy or the achievements we attain, we risk losing touch with our true nature, much like an artist who, after years of painting, comes to believe that the canvas is their reflection rather than an expression of their deeper self. Now, let's think about a river winding its way through a valley. The river doesn't fight the landscape or the rocks it encounters. Instead, it flows around them. The river's movement isn't forced, it adapts. The river, like life, moves in a constant state of flux, changing course when needed, and flowing effortlessly around obstacles. In contrast, if the river were rigid, it would crash, unable to adjust to the ever-changing flow of its environment. Similarly, when we become rigid in our identity, when we attach ourselves to a fixed idea of who we are, we become less adaptable to change. Our ego, like a rigid riverbank, prevents us from flowing freely with life's changes. Another example that comes to mind is a flower in the wind. Think of a flower blooming in the open field. It stands tall, its petals unfurled towards the sun, but it doesn't hold onto the wind as though it were a source of control or security. When the wind blows, it simply sways with it, letting go of any resistance. The flower doesn't fight the wind. It simply flows with it, knowing that its true nature is not defined by the wind, but by its essence. The ego is the opposite. It's like trying to grasp the wind and control it, when in reality, the more we hold on, the more we strain. In life, we do the same thing. We hold tightly to who we think we are, our achievements, our relationships, our reputation. But as life flows, changes, and throws curveballs our way, the more we cling, the more we suffer. We are taught from an early age to be something, to achieve something, but in doing so, we often forget that our true essence isn't in these labels. The ego makes us feel special, but it also ties us down, preventing us from embracing the fluid nature of existence. The key is realizing that the ego is not who you truly are. It is the story you tell yourself, the image you've constructed from your experiences and society's expectations. But beneath that image lies something much deeper and more authentic. Your true self is adaptable, like the flower, the river, and the tree, flowing naturally with the rhythms of life. When you let go of the ego, you allow yourself to become more flexible and open to whatever life brings. This process of letting go isn't about losing yourself. It's about shedding the layers of false identity that you've accumulated over the years. It's about understanding that you are not confined to the roles, the labels, or the stories you tell yourself. When we accept this impermanence, we embrace the fact that change is not our enemy. It's a natural part of being. And when we stop resisting that change, we find the inner peace that we've been seeking all along. Exercise. Take 5 minutes every morning to check in with yourself. Sit quietly and ask, "Who am I right now?" Reflect on how much of your identity is shaped by the roles you play or the expectations you hold. Are you truly in alignment with your deeper self, or are you living according to an image that's been shaped by outside forces? Pay attention to how this awareness influences the decisions you make today. Notice how much of your daily actions stem from a sense of ego, and how letting go of that attachment can bring a sense of freedom. Number 2, the dangers of an inflated ego. An inflated ego can be deceptively alluring. At first, it may feel empowering, like a lion strutting across the savannah, its mane billowing in the wind, its presence demanding attention. The lion is a symbol of power, strength, and dominance, and for many, the ego serves a similar function, giving us a sense of control, importance, and pride. It convinces us that we are special, different, and superior in some way. It inflates our sense of self, sometimes making us forget the reality that we are interconnected with everything around us. But the danger of a swollen ego is like the overinflated balloon. The more you blow air into it, the more it becomes unstable. Eventually, it reaches a point where even the slightest touch or external pressure causes it to pop. The ego, when unchecked, can lead us to places of arrogance, defensiveness, and pride. We begin to see ourselves as separate from others, elevating ourselves above others based on external accomplishments, career, wealth, recognition, when in fact none of these are permanent. The irony of the ego is that it creates distance between us and the very peace we seek. A perfect analogy here is a mountain, towering and imposing against the landscape. The mountain may appear unmoving, solid, and grand, but over time, erosion wears it down. The rock that once seemed so indestructible slowly crumbles away, sometimes in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. The ego can be like this mountain, seemingly powerful but ultimately fragile. It may appear strong and invulnerable, but it is constantly eroding from within, growing more difficult to maintain as it gets bigger, more self-important, and disconnected from reality. One of the greatest risks of an inflated ego is that it blinds us to our true selves. It creates a barrier between us and the present moment. We become so focused on proving ourselves, on appearing successful, on holding onto an image of what we want to be, that we lose sight of who we actually are beneath the layers of pride and self-importance. The ego becomes a mask, an image we present to the world, and it isolates us from genuine connection with others. In my own life, I once knew someone who was deeply successful in their career. They had it all: status, wealth, respect. And yet their ego was constantly in the driver's seat. It was easy to see how this inflated sense of self led them to become defensive and angry at even the smallest critique. They lived for approval, constantly measuring their worth by how others saw them. And in the process, they became lonely, disconnected, and unable to embrace the humility necessary for growth. The more they tried to hold onto their ego, the more isolated they became. Lesson: an inflated ego may give us a temporary sense of security, but it is ultimately unstable. It blinds us to the richness of the present moment and prevents us from forming meaningful connections. Like the mountain eroding over time, the ego's power is fragile, and it eventually causes more harm than good. When we rely too heavily on our image, status, or achievements, we lose touch with our true self, which is far more peaceful and grounded. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't take pride in our achievements or have confidence in ourselves. Confidence is different from arrogance. Confidence comes from understanding and accepting who we truly are, while arrogance is rooted in the illusion that we are separate or superior to others. Letting go of the inflated ego means accepting ourselves with all our flaws and strengths, without the need to prove our worth to anyone. Exercise. Take a moment today to observe when your ego is driving your actions. Are you reacting defensively when someone challenges you? Do you feel the need to prove yourself in a conversation or work environment? Try to step back and recognize these moments as opportunities to practice humility. Remind yourself that true strength lies not in holding onto an inflated image, but in being able to let go, to remain open to feedback, and to connect with others on a genuine level. Number 3, whispers of freedom, letting go to reveal your true essence. Letting go of the ego is often misunderstood as a passive act, but in truth, it is one of the most empowering choices we can make. Imagine a butterfly emerging from its cocoon. It doesn't struggle against its transformation. It doesn't cling to the safety of its old form. Instead, it surrenders to the process, embracing the change as a natural evolution of its being. This is the true nature of letting go, the act of shedding what no longer serves you to reveal the true self that has always been there. The ego, like a veil, often hides the clarity of who we are. We become so attached to the roles we play, the success we achieve, and the image we project that we forget who we were before all these layers were added. Think of a river which flows effortlessly and constantly, adjusting to the landscape it encounters. If the river were to stop flowing, held back by barriers or obstacles, it would stagnate, losing its essence. But when it flows, it becomes clear, calm, and free, adapting to the path before it. Letting go of the ego is much like that river, removing the dam that blocks your true flow, allowing your natural essence to emerge, unfettered by the need to control. A perfect analogy can be found in a tree that stands tall yet does not cling to the seasons. It lets go of its leaves when the time comes without regret. Each season is an opportunity for renewal, for embracing the ebb and flow of life. The tree's strength lies not in its rigid stance, but in its adaptability, in its understanding that letting go of what is no longer needed creates space for something new. In life, we must learn to do the same. We must let go of the labels, the judgments, and the attachments that keep us from being in alignment with our true essence. The more we hold on to these external definitions, the more we lose touch with who we are at the core. The true self, free from the ego, is like a cloud drifting in the sky, not bound by any shape or form. It moves with the wind, flowing gracefully without attachment to any one idea of what it should be. This is the freedom that comes with letting go, the freedom to be, to exist in the present moment, to embrace change, and to flow with life's natural rhythms. In our own lives, we often build walls around us, walls made of expectations and identities. We think we need to be a certain way to be accepted or to succeed. But these walls are what keep us from seeing the sky, from experiencing the fullness of life that is available to us when we are open, present, and free from ego-driven needs. Just as the cloud moves with the wind, when we let go of our attachments to ego, we too can find peace and flow naturally with the world around us. Lesson: letting go of the ego is not about diminishing who we are. It's about embracing the freedom to be who we truly are without the constraints of external validation or false identities. It is the art of releasing the need to control and simply allowing life to unfold with grace. A personal experience. I remember a time when I was deeply attached to the idea of being a successful content creator. I thought my worth was tied to the number of views, likes, and comments I received. My ego was wrapped in these external measures of success. But over time, I realized that this attachment only drained my energy and left me feeling empty. It wasn't until I let go of this need for approval, this need for external validation, that I began to create from a place of authenticity, from a space where my true essence could shine through. Exercise. Take a moment each day to reflect on an area of your life where you feel attached to an external identity. It could be your job, your appearance, or the role you play in your relationships. Now ask yourself, who am I without this identity? What is left when you strip away the labels and expectations? Practice sitting with this emptiness, allowing yourself to be free of any definitions. This is where your true essence lies without the ego's constraints. Letting go is not about loss, it's about release, and in this release we find the beauty of our true self, fluid, adaptable, and free. And just as the butterfly embraces its transformation, we too can embrace the freedom that comes with letting go of the ego, revealing our true essence in all its natural, peaceful glory. Number 4, surrender and trust in the universe. Surrendering is often seen as weakness, as though giving up control makes us passive or helpless. But in reality, surrender is one of the greatest acts of strength and wisdom we can cultivate. It's not about giving in to life's challenges or retreating into resignation, but about accepting the natural flow of life and trusting that the universe has a way of guiding us, especially when we stop trying to control everything. Think of a leaf gently falling from a tree. It doesn't resist the wind. Instead, it surrenders to the natural force that guides it down to the earth. The leaf trusts the process, knowing that its role in the greater cycle of life is complete. The same principle applies to us. We don't have to fight against the currents of life. Sometimes, we simply need to let go and trust that the universe will take us exactly where we need to be. A powerful example of this is a sailor on a boat. The sailor can steer the boat and adjust the sails, but the wind ultimately determines the boat's course. The sailor doesn't fight against the wind, but rather works with it, trusting the wind's guidance while using their skill to navigate. In the same way, we can navigate our lives, but we must recognize that there are forces beyond our control. Surrendering doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. It means working in harmony with life, instead of trying to bend it to our will. Another way to think about surrendering is through the example of a dancer. Imagine the dancer on a stage, flowing gracefully with the music, letting go of rigid movements, trusting the rhythm of the beat. The dancers' trust in the music allows them to move freely, expressing emotions that words cannot capture. If the dancer were too focused on getting every step perfect, they would lose the essence of the dance. The same applies to life. When we surrender to its rhythm, trusting in its unfolding, we allow ourselves to experience the beauty and flow of the moment. One of the most powerful aspects of surrendering is trusting the process. Life will not always unfold the way we expect it, and that can be unsettling. We may want things to happen on our terms and within our timeline, but the truth is that everything unfolds in its own time. A seed, for instance, doesn't rush to grow. It doesn't demand to sprout immediately. It surrenders to the soil, the water, and the sunlight, trusting that in time it will become a plant, and in the right season it will bloom. Trusting the process of life is about having the patience to wait, the faith to believe that things are happening as they should, even when we don't fully understand the timing. I recall a period in my life when I was determined to achieve success in a specific way, through a certain career path, certain milestones, and certain approvals from others. But despite my best efforts, I wasn't getting the results I expected. I felt frustrated and disillusioned. That's when I realized I was trying to force my timeline on life rather than surrendering to what the universe was guiding me towards. Once I let go of that rigid control and simply followed my heart, opportunities unfolded in unexpected ways, leading me to a place I had never anticipated, but one that was far more fulfilling than I could have imagined. Lesson: surrendering is not about giving up. It's about trusting the natural flow of life, releasing the need to control every outcome and allowing the universe to guide you. Trust that everything is unfolding exactly as it should, and that life has a way of guiding you to where you are meant to be. The more we surrender, the more we experience peace. Exercise. Today, reflect on an area of your life where you are trying to control the outcome. It could be your career, your relationships, or your personal goals. Take a moment to surrender this desire to control. Trust that by letting go, you are allowing the universe to guide you toward the best possible outcome. Practice mindfulness and acceptance of the present moment, knowing that the journey is just as important as the destination. Conclusion: unmasking the true you. In letting go of our ego, we are not losing our identity, we are rediscovering it. The mask that we've so carefully built up over time is just an illusion, a veil between us and our true selves. The more we hold onto that mask, the further we drift from peace and the authenticity that lies within. When we finally choose to take it off, we create space for real freedom. A life where we can be at peace with who we are, free from comparison and external validation. True peace isn't found in constantly striving, in proving our worth, or in keeping up appearances. It's found in simplicity, in surrendering the need to control everything and just being. By letting go of the ego, we align ourselves with the natural flow of life, and in that flow, we find our deepest sense of peace. The key is not to hold onto an identity, but to let go of it, to trust the process, to trust in your own inner wisdom and the universe's timing. When you stop trying to control your story, you can finally embrace the beauty of just being you. So today, I invite you to take a small step towards letting go. Ask yourself, what are you still holding onto? Is it an old belief, a past hurt, or a story that no longer serves you? Gently release it and allow yourself to simply be without the weight of expectation. Embrace the freedom that comes when you let go of the mask. If this message resonated with you, subscribe for more insights on how to live a life of peace. free from ego and full of meaning. Don't forget to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you're beginning to let go and unmask your true self.